Hey everybody, this is Paul. Just making a quick little out of the blue video here with the you know market bouncing up, down, left, right, backwards, forwards. I wanted to make a quick little video since I just made a trade in my account that would kind of summarize how I trade certain things, like like when do I decide to sell. So that's kind of what this video is. Like, when do I sell? Why don't I sell every stock that's up, or that kind of thing. So what I've decided to do is so a good example right now is I decided to sell 24, I think it was 24 shares of energy. I like to keep one share just so I can keep my position open in it. Um, and kind of have it still on my spreadsheet as a reminder to get back into it when it dips again, because these stocks are pretty cyclical and predictable when they go up and down. But what I wanted to look at was specifically what I decided, like why I decided to sell energy and take profits versus, say, BST, for example. So with BST, for example, on some of these positions, I'm actually up 11%. Should have bought the dip more, right? But right now, with BST, it says I'm up $332.27. So you might be asking yourself, well, why don't I just hit the sell button? Like, why would I hit the sell button on energy, which is a utility and you would think a long term stock, versus hitting the sell button on BST? Well, the reasoning is simple. And if you look at it, so it's 332. So what I do is I go to my estimated and I go to BST. So BST right now is paying me $79.50. That's because I have just a massive position in BST right now because I'm riding this tech wave. That's my previous video. I had a reason for why I was doing that. So $79.50 times 12. So $954 a year. That's a lot of, and whenever that pays out, also there's another reason too, is that that pays out as a capital under the capital gains tax rate. So it doesn't pay out as a dividend; it actually pays out as capital gains. BlackRock does some very interesting things on how they avoid some things. That's why I even invested in this, even though it has a high rate on it. I might do a video on BST, but there's so many videos on BST, it's not even funny. So right now, $954 a year. So basically $79. So let's you could do the math here. So 324 divided by 79. So in 4 months, so this pays out every month. So in 4 months, I would get this 324 in dividends. Now you might be asking, okay, well, what was different about energy? So energy pays out quarterly, once every 3 months, and it was up $168. So that's what this profit is right here, 168. So basically, this number was literally right here not too long ago. And originally, you're not going to be able to see it now because I sold the position out, but it pays out on March 1st, and it's right here. It's at 25. So that means it pays $25 4 times a year, so $100. So I made $168. So it would take right there 6 dividend payouts, and that adds up to almost a year and a half. So 365 divided by 2. So it would take 547 days to get this $168. So that is a little bit of the reasoning as to why you might be like, well, it's a dividend channel. You would think you're just going to hold. Yeah, I'm not a millionaire. So I have to it's called scalping profits. So what that means is basically if one of my positions runs up quite a bit in a very short period of time, and it's a situation where I can basically grab, six payments of a dividend very quickly, and there's no telling what the market might do. Like, energy might go down to 98, for example. AbbVie was the same way. This was one that had run up a tremendous amount. So you can see how this pays off, and this is how much I've made. Kind of, it's called scalping, but this is kind of a similar thing. So even though AbbVie's dividend is extremely high, I got in extremely low. I decided to scalp profits. Ford, exact same thing. Energy, you can see right here, exact same thing. Um, this one was when I sold 41 shares of it. So if it's a stock that I think is going to move back to a certain price, I did this all last year with the best example is Starbucks. So Starbucks, for example, I got into Starbucks at $91. Their dividend is kind of trash. Like they would have to have massive dividend increases, but they're not going to do that right now when they're facing like literally. If you see the news coming out of Starbucks, they're not increasing their dividend too much anytime soon, and if they do, it'd be crazy. But if you can kind of see like so, that's kind of like why I would do something like that. Is if I think a company is going to go back down. Now, this could run. The analysts are saying this could run to $130. So I could have just lost out on probably $1,000 worth of profit just now by selling those few shares. But this is a stock that has traded in a range, and not every analyst is as positive on the stock as the rest. So some analysts expect it to go back to 105, and their reasoning is very simple: is basically they have higher profits than they did last year, so you would think they're doing great. But they're not pulling in after you subtract out their bills and the amount of maintenance that they have to do on their equipment. Because if you live in Louisiana, you see their trucks all around, always fixing their lines, especially after a hurricane. Going into hurricane season, if we have a bad hurricane season, the stock just can't get off the ground. It's kind of like what happened with PEG, but you can kind of see they go through these cyclical cycles, especially going into something like March, for example. Um, if you go out to the 3 year, you kind of see where it wants to get to that 133, but you would need kind of going into the run up to the coronavirus, it looked like it wanted to go there, and you would think everybody's at home, so higher energy bills. So that's just not how it's worked. But so as you can see, they just kind of go through these cyclical cycles, and that's if there was such a thing as a cyclical utility, I guess that's what kind of would be it. So they kind of go to these little peaks right here, they drop off. They go to these little peaks, they drop off. They go to these peaks, and then they drop back off, and then it just kind of keeps going. But it wants to run until 135, and it might do it at some point. But they got to get their costs down. They have to get their equipment updated so that they don't have to keep constantly replacing it. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I sold energy. So there's actually a lot that goes into me deciding to sell a stock. I don't just do it willy nilly just because. So what I did is I basically took the profits. I took the money, put it into Unilever. This is another stock. This is something else that I also like to do. Is if a stock pays out on March 1st and I sell it for a profit and I make say 168, what I'll do is I'll put it into another stock that is probably down, hopefully down. I prefer to buy them when they're down like this, which means they can go back up. And I'll put it into something like this that's also going to pay out on March 1st. And then I bought a few more AT&T shares that were down, that were down. So just to give you a general idea of like kind of what the thinking is, because if you look at this, you would think, okay, well, you should sell BST under that same logic, and that's not the logic. This will pay out $940 or $950, I believe, within the year, but energy will pay out, it would take a year and a half to get these types of profits out of it. Once I get up to say 200,000, 300,000 invested, or maybe something like that, I'll just ignore it and not even touch it ever again. And only sell if I've held it for a year. These are kind of the recommended things. So you have to look at the situation that you're in to see, is it worth it to take short-term profits to turn around and then invest it. So this is what I did all throughout 2020, and I probably made about $15,000 doing this. And this does so short-term capital gains. They do get taxed, I believe, at 12% for my income bracket. But so there is this. This isn't free. So this right here would get taxed at zero, but this right here would get taxed at 12%. If you made over like $100,000 a year, I think they start taxing even your long-term gains. But you have to look at a chart and talk to an accountant on that. But so that's how I decide when I want to sell. What's a good time? If BST, so this is what would trigger a sell signal from me with BST, especially since I have an idea that I think there's going to be a recession mid 2023 because rates would just be high enough at that point to kind of cause like credit issues. Um, if BST got up to say 1500, 2000, I would probably sell half of this position right here. If this got up to say 1500, 2000, this would get sold. I would probably sell about half of that position because that would be locking in 12 months worth of gains for something that could drop even further. So if you look at the historic high of this one right here, and this also corresponds with the historic high of the Nasdaq, it was at $59 or 50, yeah, $59. If it went back to 59, that would sort of correspond to a historic high back in the Nasdaq with a very much tighter rate situation. So that's a situation where I would take profits. So the profits on this would have to be much higher. So this would probably have to say like plus 15% or something like that. But what I would do is when I sold it, I would make sure that I sold out of some of these higher positions that I got in at like 46 or something like that, compared to these that were near the bottom down here where I would lock in gains, because these would be like at that point it would be like 27% gain. So even if it dumped really hard, I would still not lose money. So that's kind of how I would line that up. But it would have to go up by quite a bit for me to justify it. So right now it's not, I can't justify it. So, but that's kind of my thinking. I think I wanted to make just a quick video just explaining how I decide when to do that and when not to do that. So hopefully you enjoy. Let me know if you have a comment or if you just completely disagree with this. And you think I should just hold it in, whatever your philosophy is. Or if you got a better idea, let me know. Thank you. Bye.